My name's John Bradley. I was a St Paul's boarder from 1970 to 1973, and I was also fortunate to be the captain of the first 15, 1973, of which Mark was a team member. He played the game like the modern rugby player plays rugby today, like any All Black. He was mobile, he was athletic, he could pass, he could fend, but also he was incredibly loyal in that if there was any problems, he would never hesitate to step in and protect or defend and stand up for his teammates. And lastly, he was very fearless. He always was prepared to give his all and go the distance. It was the family background that he had. He was the most magnificent parents. His family, many of them here tonight, were just so magnificent people. A humble, forthright, confident, but never to get big-headed about anything. So this achievement tonight, I think, is thoroughly deserved, and I think I can talk on behalf of all the ex-pupils and those here tonight of the great memories that he's given us in his playing days. What a great role model he has been for us all. And for me personally, it's just that he's been a great friend all these years, and I know he's the same to many others. And the first thing he asked me when he was coming back, he said, "Brad, do you mind me taking me down to the Leopards, the Otahu League Club? I want to go and see the boys there and help them out and say g'day," which I know he does regularly. So to Mark, well done, mate. It's great to have known you, and this honour, as all honours, is well awarded.
Inducted into the Australian Rugby League Hall of Fame, the first New Zealander ever inducted into it. New Zealand's Player of the Century. Inducted into the New Zealand Sporting Hall of Fame, New Zealand Rugby League Immortal. He played for the Kiwis, of course, including Kiwis captain for 8 consecutive years. Incredible. North Sydney's Team of the Century, Brisbane North's Team of the Century, New Zealand Warriors head coach. It is a remarkable story. But it's also a story, as you were telling us at the table, about the games you didn't win. And sometimes you were playing for teams in which you were the star player, but the team wasn't going so well. And you were deeply inspired by a man called John Wooten, who was a UCLA basketball coach, right? A brilliant one who wrote books and was not only a great coach, but an inspirational writer. And he wanted to deal as much with the concept of victory as with the concept of defeat and getting up. And being a winning part of a team that might not be winning, and how you could personally be your best even in that environment. And he quoted a poem by a guy called George Moriarty, and it's called The Road Ahead or The Road Behind. And this is a very important poem to you, and Bruce found it for me and has asked me to read it, because this sums up your philosophy. This is a poem about winning and losing and how they're much closer to each other than we realise, right? So it's called The Road Ahead or the Road Behind. Winning and success. Sometimes I think the fates must grin as we denounce them and insist the only reason we can't win is that the fates themselves have missed. Yet there lives on the ancient claim we must win or lose, we win or lose within ourselves. The shining trophies on our shelves can never win tomorrow's game. So you and I know deeper down there is a chance to win the crown, and when we fail to give our best, we simply haven't met the test of giving all and saving none until the game is really won. Of showing what is meant by grit, of fighting on when others quit, of playing through, not letting up. It's bearing down that wins the cup. Of taking it and taking more until we gain the winning score. Of dreaming there's a goal ahead, of hoping when our dreams are dead. Of praying when our hopes have fled. Yet, losing, not afraid to fall, if bravely we have given all, for who can ask more of a man than giving all within his span? That, it now seems to me, is not so far from victory. And so the fates are seldom wrong, no matter how they twist and wind. It's you and I who make our fates. We open up or close the gates on the road ahead or the road behind. It's a wonderful poem, and it kind of sums up your attitude. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Graham. Tell me about your life at St Paul's.
It was a bit scary. I think Paul mentioned before that he got caned a lot, and I think everyone got caned a lot, yeah. But it was wonderful. I learnt to love the Lord. I think there's never been a time when he hasn't walked by my side. And I think I've been blessed in many ways. And obviously, farm boy, Bruce, asked me to write a speech, which has now been cancelled, but I spent a lot of time doing it. And one of the things that really stuck out to me is the support from above and the family support. Like I'm lucky enough to be here with my family tonight. I've got 3 sisters and their brother, my brother-in-laws, their husbands, and I class St Paul's as part of my family, as I do my siblings, and I've been lucky enough to be surrounded by people who mentored me and helped me through my life. So I've had a great innings. I can't complain.
What did you learn about being part of a team from being here, and your responsibility within a team to lift the team? Because you always played as if you understood that by being your best, everyone else would follow your example.
Well, I'm not really sure it was that complicated. I often said when I coached, I used to say to the boys, look, we're all going to meet St Peter. It's all going to be just after we die, and he's going to say, I gave you this talent, and I gave you that talent, and I gave you that talent. Let me see what you did with it. Righto, well, you can go and see the bloke with the fiery pitchfork. So it was really important that you used the talents that you got, that you had. And Brad, can I say thanks for that? Man, that was a wonderful speech on the way in. I was really, really impressed with that. Thank you. But I never saw myself like that. I just saw myself as having a go, and or having a crack, as they say. It was just, you had what you had, and you did your best that you had. And in the morning when you got up and brushed your teeth, you had to reconcile a bloke in the mirror. So that was the way I lived, and that was the way my family was brought up, and how we were. And I say that when I say how we were, I say as St Paul's was, because in this community of ours, our family, that's what you get. You got to give what you got.
You got to give what you got, even when times are tough, hey? And that's what that poem's about. Yeah. So sometimes you would get knocked horribly, and you would have taken some bashes to the head that you probably didn't tell anyone about, and these days you wouldn't have been allowed to play for a few weeks afterwards.
You can't tell by looking at me, though.
Well, I'm pleased we can't. No. And also you played for teams sometimes that, weren't going so well, and yet you always managed to find the energy, didn't you, to get up, always, week after week, game after game, year after year.
Look, it comes back to that thing again, where you have to give what you got. Because, the only person you really got to satisfy is yourself. At the end of the day, we were talking about this before, and those guys that cheat or do something wrong and are successful regardless, when they meet the people that they beat years later, they must feel terrible about it, And it's not about winning or losing, it's about giving what you got. And what you got to use to the best of your ability. And, that's marvellous if you can get a result from that, but the result is that you've done the best you can, And I can remember having been awarded, a prize or man of the match, and just being that upset because I knew I didn't deserve it, and having to be forced to go out and accept it because I didn't play to my standards. It wasn't anyone else's standards that I had to apply. It was my standards. So
Where did that come from?
Oh, look, I've got 3 sisters, and 2 of them are older than me, and then and you got to reconcile with them, yeah. No, I don't know. It was how the school is. It was how I was brought up in Otahu. It was how my club was. It's how it should be, I believe.
Yeah, I think everyone in the room would agree with you. Yeah, it is how it should be. Yeah. We've got a really fine young head boy at the school.
Yes.
And yeah. I think it's, because it's Friday night, I think some of the boys may, and the dinner's been served, I think some of the boys may have drifted off home after a long week, and it's exam time for many of the kids and all that kind of stuff. But what would your advice be to the boys who are leaving St Paul's and heading into the world about how they need to take the world on?
Wow. Well, I hope they were here for our first three recipients. I mean, to be sitting in the same room as them and to hear them talk and to hear what they espoused and all the good things that, like, I was just privileged to sit in the room and listen to them, and I was thinking, wow, what am I doing here? What am I going to say when I get up on stage? Because, you know, they've done more than you could imagine as far as I'm concerned. And I think it's belief, you know. You got to believe in yourself. You got to figure out what you're good at and have a go. Manako said to start with that he had no grand plan. There was, and that was the same. I was just drifting along. I was expected to go to work, and I went to work, and I played footy, and I stuck up for my mates, and you did what you did. You know, that's just how it was.
Did you not have a grand plan? Because this extraordinary story of you going to Australia and basically at a time when Kiwis weren't really welcome in the league scene in Australia and sort of demanding to be included. There was an outrageous kind of almost temerity in that, wasn't there? You basically made them take you.
Well, I had a great friend of mine, Graham Lowe, was coaching at who, and I played with in the junior grades. He was our player coach in third grade, which was the last of the junior grades, if I remember correctly. And he became our senior coach, our premier coach, and he went to Brisbane to further his coaching career. And he rang me and he said, would you like to come over? And I said, yeah, I don't know. I was going to go fishing. I'd played for New Zealand. I'd played for Auckland. No one had a long career in those days because, you had work and a job. And I just had my first son. Anyway, I decided to go. There was no contract involved. I paid for my plane fare. I arrived. My wife went to Sydney to see her mother with my young son. And I got a job up there and went to work. And New Zealand Rugby League wasn't playing the game, so I wasn't allowed to go and train with them. So it was really hot. And I was a jibboard stopper from back here. I worked for Winston's. That might be the only similarity that Manuka and I have. So I got there and I wasn't allowed to train with them. And then finally, a week before our first game against our pre-season game against Valleys, I was allowed to train with them. So I go down there and try and sort a few things out, as I think we might have mentioned before. And I played, I think, the pre-season games without a contract. Just went and played footy. And finally, the secretary of the club at that stage, Bobby Bax, who's quite a famous Brisbane personality. He was a SP bookie and lots of other things. He decided he was going to sign me after a couple of games, and he was standing in the back bar at North Devils Leagues Club, and he pulled a coaster off the table which the bear was sitting on, and he sort of shook it out, and he said, "How does that figure sound?" And it was going to pay me $500 for the year, and I went, "Yeah, that sounds pretty good, mate." So I signed the back of the coaster, and that was done. That was my first contract. Yeah.
What year was that?
1980. Yeah.
Bloody hell.
Yeah. So yeah.
And your eyes are sparkling. That was a fantastic time in your life, was it?
It was great. Yeah, we won the comp that year. I captained New Zealand for the first time, took them to England and France in 1980, and we drew actually with England and France. So maybe it wasn't successful, but yeah, it was, as I think I told you before. I played lots and lots of footy games for years and years and years at the top level. And if you counted my wins and losses, you'd say my wins far outweighed my losses in both coaching and playing. And but I'd like to think I gave it my best every time out. So winning is winning, but being successful you can still lose and be successful if you play to the everything.
So you're saying your losses far outweighed your wins? Or you wins?
Oh yeah, no, and my losses far outweighed it. Yeah, like I had at Otahu, I was very successful. We won the comp many times. Won the knockout. We won the triple, I think, 2 or 3 times when I was there, from 75 to 79. We beat touring sides like Australian Sydney sides on the end of the year trip. We beat them. We beat Cronulla after they lost the grand final. We beat them 6-2. We were a very successful side. Then I went to Brisbane and we won the comp up there. They hadn't won it forever.
So this is a winning habit so far.
Yeah, so then I go to North Sydney and she's pretty much all downhill. But in the years that I went, I was a captain there for 8 years. I finished in 88, started in 81, and we had one successful year. And we were successful, meaning we played in the semi-finals. So for all those other years, I wasn't a winning player.
But you were loved by that club, weren't you?
But
And
I,
its
yeah, I
fans?
was successful. Yeah, I won a lot of Daily M things and all the awards going around. So, but it was just the fact that I saw it as competition, and I played with my mates, and like me mates and me mates. That's it.
I want to ask you one final question. It's about pulling on jerseys. Do you remember pulling on the St. Paul's jersey for the first time?
I do. Yeah, I do. As Brad said, it was a special association, and we all have in this room, all the old boys in this room. I've got to say, I think the big fellas smile on us forever, and it's particularly I. And I think we're very lucky that that we had that association, and our success in life doesn't mean being rich or powerful or winning 1,000 games and never losing. Success is, to me, is having peace of mind and doing the best you could whenever you could.
Yeah, that's a great thing to say, I think. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, fucking fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Graham, extraordinary man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely brilliant.